While the audiophile community have worked themselves into an absolute lather of excitement over Apple Music's new high-resolution streaming capabilities, Apple themselves seem to be far more excited about spatial audio. But is this yet another attempt at pseudo surround sound designed to get you to buy AirPods Max? Well, it's a little bit more complicated, so let's take a look at how you can get spatial audio out of Apple Music and whether it offers anything to the serious audiophile. Welcome back to the channel, Audio Nerds, and thanks for being part of this wonderful audio community. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit that little red button below. You know you want to. Okay, so far we've covered Apple Music lossless and high-resolution audio at length in a previous video, but in that video I willfully neglected to discuss spatial audio. The reason for that is that I am by nature biased in favour of high-quality two-channel stereo audio, and I've never been previously impressed by attempts to recreate spatial audio over headphones. But I wanted to keep an open mind and try it properly for a few days prior to sharing my thoughts with you. So first of all, what is Dolby Atmos spatial audio? You'll be most familiar with it in the context of movie theatres, where an array of surround sound speakers, including side and down-firing ceiling speakers, give an impressive sense of sonic immersion, allowing you to believe that, yup, there really is a helicopter circling around your head. What Apple have been trying to do is to simulate that effect through headphones, and they first introduced spatial audio to some of their Apple TV shows last year. As long as you were listening through their AirPods and other headphones equipped with the H1 chip, it worked reasonably well. But how does all this translate to music? Well, we'll get to that in a minute. But first of all, let's look at how you go about experiencing Apple Music spatial audio. At the moment, it only works on Apple Music running on an iOS device or a Mac, and not on Android or Windows, officially anyway. You do get beta on Android devices, which I believe some people have been able to use Dolby Atmos spatial audio on, but on my Android phone it's not an option even in the beta. If you are using it on a Mac, an iPad and an iPhone, you do of course need to be on the latest software update, but you don't need the iOS 15 beta. So to make sure you are getting it right, you need to go into Music Settings and enable Dolby Atmos. It's under the Audio tab. If you have a supported AirPod or Beats set of earphones, you can leave it on automatic, as it will detect these devices immediately and play tracks in Atmos when they're available. However, it works just as well with any stereo headset or speaker pair connected wired or wirelessly. You just need to select always on rather than automatic. You can also choose to download files in Dolby Atmos, which is interesting as it downloads both the Atmos track as well as the stereo version, presumably in AAC. But remember kids, Dolby Atmos is not lossless. I downloaded, for example, Olivia Rodrigo's latest album in lossless, and the total size came to 389 megabytes. I then downloaded it again in the Atmos format, which resulted in a significantly smaller file size, so clearly Atmos is using some form of lossy compression. Okay, once you've done all that, it's time to dive into the atmosphere. Haha, see what I did there? But how do you find all that Dolby Atmos flavoured goodness? Well, if you hit up Apple Music and go to Browse, you'll find spatial audio being promoted front and centre. At the moment, there are not a huge number of complete albums available in Atmos, but Apple have helpfully curated some playlists to get you started. Other than that though, it's quite hard to find entire albums in Atmos, and there are many albums which just have one or two songs in surround, so the entire album is not labelled as Atmos ready. I really think Apple should have made it slightly more intuitive to discover Atmos content, as they're pushing the concept so heavily. Now, if you've set everything up correctly, once you start playing a Dolby Atmos enabled track, you'll see the logo appear and you know you are good to go. So now on to the big question, how does it actually sound? Well, if you're expecting to feel as if you're in a totally immersive sonic environment similar to being at the cinema, you will be mightily disappointed. Remember that despite all the mixing and processing trickery, the sound is still just emerging through two speakers rather than 7 or more. Therefore, the quality of the experience really depends on how well the track has been mastered and mixed, and I can tell you that it's extremely inconsistent at the moment. Having listened to a huge number of different tracks from all the various Apple playlists, I would suggest that in the best case scenario, spatial audio does sound a little bit more expansive with a convincingly broad 3D soundstage. Two of the best examples I could find were the Atmos versions of the Beatles' Abbey Road album and Norah Jones's Come Away With Me. Abbey Road, let's face it, it's such a lush sounding recording even in stereo format, and it's one of the few Beatles records that was specifically mixed for stereo. The Atmos treatment really brings out the sense of space on some of the tracks. So for example, on the opener, Come Together, Ringo's drum fills really do pan around immersively, and the guitar riff occupies a very clearly defined sonic space, with John's slightly processed vocals floating above the whole track. Here Comes the Sun is another highlight, with George Harrison's acoustic guitars surrounding you with their warmth and being distinctly separate from the bass, and of course George's vocal line. The Norah Jones album is also astonishing, with her gorgeous jazzy vocals being projected convincingly in front of you, and you can place all the other instruments clearly on the stage beside her. For sheer sonic impact, go and listen to Prince's When Doves Cry, where the engineers have gone, quite frankly, totally bonkers. The guitars in the intro pan wildly from left to right, and Prince's vocals pop up in totally unexpected places. The drums do sound heavily processed, but the whole thing hangs together really well and is a somewhat imaginative and different reworking of the source material. I'm not a huge fan of jazz, but the jazz playlist on Apple Music really does seem to showcase Atmos most impressively. Remember that these are generally quite old analog recordings which have been remastered carefully for the Atmos version. So for example, The Good Life by Hank Mobley is really outstanding, with Mobley's tenor sax playing expressively to the left of the mix, with the other instruments occupying front and centre, until eventually the trumpet kicks in towards the right. You could almost close your eyes and imagine these two old cool jazz dudes duetting with each other. But it's not all good news, and some of the tracks, even on Apple's featured playlists, sound like absolute trash, with massively overdone panning, along with excessive echo and reverb, all of which is compounded by haphazard and frankly weird placement of sonic elements throughout the soundstage. So for example, After Hours by The Weeknd is an album which I quite like, and for me it was totally ruined in the Atmos mix, with the vocals sounding really soft and distant and the rest of the mix sounding pretty hollow. I find it perplexing that Apple have highlighted this one album as a poster child for spatial audio. Similarly, Post Malone's Sunflower, one of my favourite tracks of recent times, sounded just weird with the drums being oddly muffled and processed. The stereo mix is much sharper and cleaner. If you want to get worse, Drive, the opening track to Automatic for the People by REM, is another misfire. Now this happens to be one of my favourite songs from an album which has really helped me through some dark times in my life. Sadly, the Atmos mix pushes Peter Buck's beautifully picked acoustic guitar way off to the side and makes it a bit louder, so much so that it totally ruins all the other elements in the mix. Switch back to stereo and the beautiful balanced production by Scott Litt immediately makes me feel so much better. Perhaps the worst thing I've heard though is Mr. Jones by Counting Crows from the album August and Everything After, where the vocals sound so distant they're almost in another room and the instruments are totally messed up. I'm sorry, I don't have a better audiophile term for it than totally messed up. There's also quite a lot of noticeable compression artifact which makes the whole thing sound just horrible. Honestly, just go listen to that one track and you'll see what I mean. It soon became obvious to me that for most of the tracks, the stereo mix, especially in lossless but also in AAC, does generally offer much more detailed resolution along with a much greater dynamic range. If you listen to the Atmos mix through some nice cans, you'll definitely realise that it's a compressed lossy audio stream, particularly in busy orchestral or rock tracks, when some elements of the mix can sound a bit thin and smeared, like a low bitrate MP3 track. Now I'm not sure how quickly Apple will be able to bring well-mastered Atmos versions of a significant proportion of their catalogue online, and without a decent range of music across all genre, it'll not amount to much more than a cool technology demo. And if they quickly flood the service with loads of poorly mastered versions of beloved albums, then people are just going to stick to the stereo versions. So where does all that leave us, apart from with the rather lovely Taylor Swift, of course? Well, If you're a 2-channel audio purist with expensive portable or home hi-fi equipment and a collection of lossless FLAC files, then relax, you're not missing out. After all, there's a reason why good old-fashioned stereo recordings have stood the test of time, whilst surround sound formats have failed to gain traction. Yeah, that's right, regardless of Apple's hype. Remember, surround sound music isn't new. It dates back to quadraphonic sound systems, which first came out in the late 60s, and it takes in technologies such as SACD, DTS, Dolby Digital, DVD audio, and even Blu-ray audio. Now, they've all suffered from compatibility issues, lack of consumer interest, and perhaps most importantly, high cost. Apple have a head start in all these areas, though. They have a large user base of Apple Music subscribers, an even larger number of AirPod owners, and significant marketing clout, including direct links with popular artists and their record labels. Most crucially, though, is the fact that they're offering the service, for now anyway, at no extra cost to existing subscribers, essentially giving you no reason not to try the new technology. Now, I don't think that Apple are really trying to appeal to the audiophile market here, but more to the mass market of casual music consumers who might be impressed by the superficial sonic fireworks on display. If you are curious and you're prepared to keep an open mind, I reckon it's worth giving spatial audio a try. There are some gems there which showcase well-known recordings in a fun and refreshingly new light. Remember also that with any new technology, it takes time and effort for audio engineers to learn how to use it effectively. Remember, when CDs were first introduced, there were some truly horrible sounding digital remasters of classic analog albums, and I think the same is going to be true here. In fact, I'd be surprised if the quality and subtlety of the Atmos mixers doesn't improve over time. So, to conclude, I think spatial audio is an enjoyable sonic diversion, but high fidelity it ain't. But those are just my thoughts, guys. I hope you found the video interesting. I'd love to hear your thoughts, particularly if you've had the opportunity to try out Apple's spatial audio. Leave your thoughts in the comment section below, and if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you very soon in the next video. Take care, guys. Bye.